Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today, we get to do my Our Fantasy Bingo TBR. It was released. It happened. I mean, it always happens, so I don't know why I'm shocked. But we got the new 2023 bingo board for Our Fantasy, and I'm just really excited about it. I've been working on my TBR. If you have no idea what Our Fantasy is, last year my friend Rachel introduced me and some of my friends to Our Fantasy Bingo. And essentially what this is the fantasy sphere of Reddit is called Our Fantasy. And each year from April 1st to March 31st, they run a bingo readathon. Now there's a bingo board, it's filled with prompts, and you just try to complete the prompts while reading fantasy, sci-fi, and speculative horror. Those all count for the SFF genre, and it's kind of just about trying to get you a little bit out of your comfort zone and getting some fun reads in. It's also, readathons are just always a fun way to make reading a little bit more fun. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. I am going for a blackout again because I'm an overachiever, and I did a blackout last year, and I think I can do it again. I'm a little bit scared of this year's, but I think I can do it again. Some basic rules to know. You can just do one row, or you can do a blackout like I am. There are two ways to make it like harder for you. There is hero mode, which means that you review every single book that you read for the bingo card. I automatically do that because I review pretty much everything on here or on Goodreads, so I always do achieve hero mode. But then there's also hard mode, which is like an extra prompt on top of that prompt. And I will be going for all hard mode for my blackout because I can't be stopped. I cannot be tamed. I'm Miley Cyrus. I can't be tamed. I can't be tamed. You know, that kind of shebang. I'm embarrassing myself. Oh God. And then the other rule I think that is needed to know is obviously you have to read it throughout this year-long process, and that you can only use an author once aboard, which also means you can only use a book once aboard. So if I read like 4 Jingle Wexlers, I can only use 1 Jingle Wexler on the board. In the purpose of making my TBR, I often put authors and books down for multiple spots, because that's just how my brain works. But if I use it for one spot, I'm obviously not using it for another spot. But I kind of make my Our Fantasy Bingo TBR more like an MBR, because there are things that come up during the year that I read that fit things better than other things, or I just don't make it to things. There will be a video at some point throughout this year on my progress of Our Fantasy. I did one last year. You can check out this little video. It'll be linked down below. And if you just want to see my finished board, this is what my board from last year looks like. I'm excited for this year's. I feel like this year's has a little bit of like a sci-fi twist to it. Like there's a lot of sci-fi based things. Let's get right into it. So let's start with the first row. Our first prompt is title with a title, and the hard mode for this is not royalty. So it can be like a hero name or like an I can't say that fucking word. It can be like a name bestowed on a hero, something like that. So I think I'm going with the third book for Wheel of Time. I don't own the third book currently, but the third book is called The Dragon Reborn, and the dragon is a title given to the chosen one, essentially. So I do know I have to read that this year, so that would count. That will most likely be my pick, but I also have Ascendant by Michael R. Miller, which Ascendant is the name they give to certain dragon riders, so this would also count. This follows a character who goes to save a dragon because he realizes the other dragons are going to kill him just for being blind, and then it's like a dragon bonding story. So I'm excited to get to this one. The next prompt is superheroes, and I'm struggling. I need some help. I actually really badly need some recommendations for this. The hard mode for this is not Marvel or DC, and I'm not really a superhero fan. In books. I like them in TV shows and movies. I used to watch all like the cartoons for like the Justice League and stuff growing up, but like book-wise it just doesn't seem to work for me. So if you have any suggestions, let me know down below. I have read the Villains Duology by V.E. Schwab already, but let me know any other recommendations down below because currently I have nothing for this spot. The next prompt is bottom of the TBR, and there is no hard mode because they said the hardest part of it is already reading a book that you've been putting off for so long. I'm not putting any book on this specifically just because I have a video on my channel called TBR Vets. This is essentially what bottom of the TBR means, a TBR veteran. Same. And when I read one of those books, those are my MBR for this prompt. The next prompt, I'm not friends with. I'm not friends with it. The next prompt is magical realism. And I don't read magical realism. That's just like not my vibe. It's not something I tend to gravitate towards, so I have no books picked out for this. I have a feeling this will be the space on the board that I replace this year, because you're allowed to replace like one space on the board with something from previous years. I think that this will be this one because I'm not a magical realism girly. But if you have any recommendations for ones you think that I would like, let me know down below, because I'm willing to give it a try. I'm just scared of it. The next space is young adult, and the hard mode for this is just that it was published in the last 5 years, which really makes my life really easy, I think, on this one. Because I think I will be getting to Ship of Smoke and Steel, which is the Wells of Sorcery, this whole series this year by Django Wexler. So this will be my planned read. But I also know that I'm reading Fury Song this month, which is by Rosaria Munda, which came out last year. And I love the Fireborn series. And if you need a recommendation for this prompt, the Fireborn series is perfect. Literally perfect, so you should read it. So I have both of those as options for this prompt. The next spot is mundane jobs, and the hard mode for this is not set on Earth. I have a couple options for this. I have Elder Race by Agent Tchaikovsky. I believe he's some sort of like scientist in that, and that's not set on Earth. I also have Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, again, some sort of scientist, but I think Annihilation's set on Earth, so not 100% sure if it hits hard mode. But we also have Ascendant again, because our main character's a cook in this originally, which is definitely a mundane job. So I definitely could be reading this one, and for this prompt, since I'm already reading The Dragon Reborn anyway, so that'll probably be what happens. But you know, in case you needed some suggestions, maybe you'll be able to thrive off the fact that I put things in different spots, so yeah. The next prompt is published in the 00s, so it has to be published from 2000 to 2009. And the hard mode for this one is just that it's not on like this Reddit list of like top 30 fantasy of the year or something. I have two options for this. I have The Shadow in Summer by Daniel Abraham, which is book one of the Long Price Quartet. I know nothing about this book. I know that they're called poets, but they're not poets, and that's about it. But it was published in 2006, I believe. Then I also have Inda by Sherwood Smith, which is a book about a second son who second sons normally get trained by their oldest brother to be part of the military, but during times of war they do get to go to a military school, and at the military school we learn a lot about like prejudices and stuff. And I'm excited about this one. I'm actually really excited, so I hope both of these actually get read this year. The next prompt is Angels and Demons. This has to be a story that predominantly focuses on angels and demons, and the hard mode for it is that our main character is an angel or a demon. It doesn't have to have both, I believe, but just has to have one of each. I am pretty sure that A Course of Dragons counts for this. I personally think it counts for hard mode, so I will probably be continuing on in this series this year, and that is my option for it. I actually really struggled with this prompt because originally I was thinking I would use this for something else, and I kind of want to use it for a different prompt later on. So I'm still looking for recommendations for books with a main character that is an angel or a demon, because the only recommendation I feel like you ever get is Good Omens, and I'm not really interested in reading Good Omens, so I would love some suggestions for this prompt down below if you have some. The next one is 5 SFF short stories, and the hard mode is just an anthology. I actually am making it a goal of mine this year to read more short story collections, so if you have any anthologies of short story collections that you think I would like, let me know. I do own Goblin by Josh Malerman, and I think that this could be read for this prompt. I plan on reading it this year anyways, but I would love to hear about some more short story collections so I can add more to my TBR, because I've learned I really enjoy short stories this year. I do have a dragon collection too, but this is a little big for me. I like this size. This is huge. The next prompt on the list is horror, and to be honest, I'm just not adding anything to this because I read a lot of horror anyway, so I feel like I don't need a specific book. The hard mode for this is just not King or Lovecraft, which felt like such a cheap hard mode personally. But I realized a lot of the people on Reddit are not horror readers, so this could be actually hard for them, because if they were to pick up a horror, it'd probably be King or Lovecraft. But for me, there's so many good horrors out there, and I read so much horror that this is like the easiest prompt ever. I'm gonna read like 4 horrors this month, so I'm just gonna use one of those. There's no reason for me to put a prompt down there if you are looking for recommendations. I think Into the Drowning Deep is a perfect horror for people who aren't as big into horror. If you are a sci-fi reader or even a fantasy reader, I think Into the Drowning Deep is a perfect like blend of sci-fi horror that like gets you into maybe liking horror. So this would be my number one recommendation, but there are a lot of horror books that I love. The next is Self-Pub and Indie, and the hard mode for this is that it's under 100 Goodreads ratings or Amazon ratings. Again, not a prompt that I find difficult because I read a lot of self-pub and indie. I'm not sure if either of these are under 100, but they are books that I have to read for the Indie Archive for my top tier Patreon book club that I host with Mel from Melonor Reads. So I know I'm reading both of these this year anyways, and I'm pretty sure this one will be under 100. I'm not entirely sure about this one. The next prompt is that it's set in the Middle East, and the hard mode is that the author is Middle Eastern heritage. And I think I'm going to read Army of the Cursed for this by Karim Solomon. This is an indie I've been dying to get to. I read the first chapter of it and almost continued. I read it for like a video, and I'm just obsessed with it. I know that there's something about the War of Last Days, the doom of mankind is just a matter of time. Now its fate rests in the hands of a hapless trio. I'm very excited to get to this. I think it's going to be beautifully well done, and it definitely fits hard mode for this as well. So, can't wait to get to this. But honestly, I'm always looking for more Middle Eastern books because I really, really love that setting and the mythology and the lore of all of that. So if you know of any, please let me know down below. I've read the Ember and the Ashes Quartet as well as Daevabad, and I've read S.A. Chakraborty's new one, but I definitely want more recommendations if you have any. The next one is a 2023 release, and the hard mode for it is that it's the author's debut book. I currently have No Heart for a Thief down. I believe it's the author's debut. And it's an indie I really want to get to this year. Last year, a lot of my bingo board ended up being indies. Indies just really worked and they hit the prompts really well. I'm typically scared of authors' debuts in traditional publishing for some reason. So I don't really have a lot of traditionally published debuts available for me. But this could change as the year goes on and friends start reading things and I'm like, let me read that too because you said it was good. If you have recommendations for this prompt, please let me know down below as well. I would love to add more like debut 2023 releases to my TBR. The next prompt is like a multiverse or alternate reality, and the hard mode for this is that they can't just like walk through a door to get there. Someone said velocity weapon counts on like the Reddit thread, so I think that this is what I currently have in there. Rachel also told me that Cradle counts, so I could continue the Cradle series for it, and I'm pretty sure that the Chorus of Dragon series you could also count for this. So, because there are like parallel worlds happening there, kind of. So, I have options for this. The next little bingo spot is POC author, and the hard mode is that it's a futuristic setting. I have Iron Widow down, and I definitely think that that hits hard mode, but I actually really, really, really would love recommendations for this square. If you have any futuristic POC authors, apparently I struggled with, and I did not like that I struggled with that. So I would love to be able to read some and be able to recommend some when something like this comes up again. So please let me know down below. The next square is the book club or read-alongs. This is a square that happens every year. The hard mode for it is to participate. It has to be a current selection, so you're participating in it. This square is for a Reddit R Fantasy read-along, so you have to read a book that they have done in a read-along and participate in it if you want to hit hard mode. So this is a square that I can't plan ahead of time because they don't really say what they're reading very far in advance. I find the Reddit system for book clubs stressful. I don't like it. So normally I skip this one. This is the spot I skipped last year, but magical realism I think will have to be skipped. Or honestly, superheroes could be skipped too. So I do think I'm going to have to attempt to do this, which just requires me being a little bit more on it and looking up their read-along stuff constantly. I wish I could plan this a little bit better. But I do know that last year there was a read-along for Dead Silence, so if I don't hit hard mode, I know I'm reading Dead Silence this year and it'll count for just like regular mode, but I really would like to hit hard mode, so I'm hoping that I will be able to participate in a read-along on Reddit. The next is novella, and the hard mode for it is not Tor.com. This is actually not that hard because I read a lot of horror novellas, but again, it's one that I'm just like leaving open. Most of the time when I read a novella, it's based on like my current mood. It's not like a planned thing, so I just decided to leave it open. I feel like that was the best way to go about this, but if you have recommendations, let me know down below. The next little spot is mythical beasts, and that one's really easy, but they did make the hard mode not dragons, which makes it a little bit more difficult, but I love myself a mythical animal companion. I'm definitely reading A Shade of Madness for this spot. I don't know how I haven't read this yet. Honestly, I just am like living in the high that is A Touch of Light and how much I loved A Touch of Light that I've been putting this off like crazy, but I need to get to it at some point. I literally have a blurb. Like, if you flip this open, if you have the hardcover, it's on the back. But like, Covers with Cassidy has a blurb. I said, a unique magic system and nuanced characters. You'll fall in love with the story from the very first page. And you will. You will fall in love with the story from the very first page. That was obviously said about Touch of Light, but there's a blurb from me on here, and I haven't read it yet. I don't know what's wrong with me, but there are griffins in this, so this is my plan. I will read this for this square. I know it. I will. It's gonna be done. The next spot is elemental magic. And I thought this would be easy, but it turns out I don't read a lot of elemental magic type stories. And the hard mode for this square is not this series or this series, which are both elemental magic series that I need to read. But I can't because I want hard mode. So, luckily, I've been putting off this series forever, and now it's time to shine. We have the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. My sister kindly reminded me that this has elemental magic, and that this is a book I've told her I was going to read month after month after month after month. It's even been one of these books will self-destruct in 12 months, and it never destructed even though I didn't read it, and a whole bunch of other things where I just need to read this book because she liked it and she tells me to read it and I haven't read it yet. So the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin is my elemental pick. And you know what? I'm sitting here and I have other things that I think I could read for this, but in order to make Amber happy, I'm not putting any other thing for the square. This has to be done. I need to get to this. This is ridiculous if I spend another year and I haven't read this. That's all I'm going to say. So this book right here, elemental. But in case you're wondering, I'm pretty sure this is elemental too. The next prompt is a myth/retelling, and the hard mode is not Roman or Greek. I think I'm going to put Alice by Christina Henry on this. This is an Alice in Wonderland retelling. I typically don't like retellings. Like fantasy retellings, I'm just not about. There is rarely ones that I like. Most of them are a little bit more whimsical, and that's just not my preferred fantasy taste. So I went with a horror retelling, because I do like horror retellings. So I think Alice by Christina Henry will be really good for me. But if you do have suggestions, I'm happy to hear them. The next is a queer norm setting, and the hard mode for this is that it's not futuristic. So it's like set in like historical setting type setting. Now, this is the one that I would like to put Chorus of Dragons on because I believe Chorus of Dragons counts for a queer norm setting. But I do also know Inda is queer norm and counts, so I could read this. I also believe that Ashes of the Sun was queer norm. I don't remember there ever being a conversation really about Maya's sapphic relationship. It just was accepted. There was no negativity about it. Nothing, no prejudice, whatever. I think that it was queer norm, and I would be interested, I'm guessing and assuming that because this was queer norm, that some of Django Wexler's other stuff could be queer norm, because all of his series have a sapphic relationship. So I could also use those if they count, because he has 2 series that I still want to read. But I'm not 100% sure on those, but I do know that this for sure is, and I would count this. So this is the one I want to use this for, is my issue from earlier. If you have recommendations for more queer norm settings, please let me know down below. I typically read a lot of books that have, when there are queer characters, there's also conversations on queer characters. Like, I love how it's done in The Black Coast, but obviously this isn't queer norm because we are discussing prejudice and stuff within this. I definitely need some recommendations for some books that it's just like widely accepted and there is no prejudice or hate. The next prompt is coastal or island setting, and the hard mode for this is that there is some kind of seafaring in it. I have down the Bone Shard War because I do know that the first 2 books I think would count for this setting and for hard mode, but obviously I haven't read the 3rd book and it's not out yet, so a lot of people haven't read it, that I don't know if it officially counts, but that's what I'm hoping to use. I was also wondering if the Grace of Kings would count for this. I know it's set on like an archipelago, and I wonder if that means it'll count, but I'm not 100% certain either. Again, this is one of those things where making my TBR, I don't know for sure until I read books, so things change, but this is what I'm planning to do at this moment in time. The next prompt is druids, and this means that it's like a wizard, magic, magician that has like earth powers, I believe. Often they are called druids. I think probably Legendborn would count for this, but I don't know if I have plans to read that this year. But what I am going to count is the Emberblade. The hard mode for this, by the way, is just like not the Iron Druid series or something by some author, but I think Mel told me that the Emberblade would count. I do have these pretty special editions, so I should probably get to it. I should read it. It's just chunky and it's scary and it's classic fantasy, which really scares me because I don't always have the best love of classic fantasy. Don't ask me why I got trigger happy and I bought a special edition for this when I'm not sure I'm gonna love it. But here I am with it. So I should read this brick of a book, and I think Our Fantasy is the perfect time to make me do it. Again, I need recommendations though, in case I don't get to the Emberblade. Maybe I should have some options, because I don't have any options right now. Let me know down below. And then we have featuring robots, and the hard mode for this is that the robot is the protagonist. I'm struggling on this, guys. I'm struggling a little bit. I have Murderbot down currently. I know that there's some big Our Fantasy discussion of whether Murderbot counts or not, because Murderbot isn't fully robotic and he does have some sort of human stuff in him form. But I think Murderbot does count. My issue is that I don't know if I ever planned on continuing Murderbot because I didn't love the first one. It was just like, alright, not my typical style of read. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. I do plan on reading Cytonic, and I think that this would count for not hard mode because there is an AI computer in here, but he doesn't have like a perspective in it. Like there's no POV, which I think means that he's not a protagonist. But I think it would count for not hard mode, but obviously I want to hit hard mode. So if you know any like books that have a robotic, I think AI would count as robot, POV in it, please let me know. Please, please, please let me know. The last prompt is sequel, and the hard mode is the third or more in the series. And this is an easy prompt. An easy prompt. I know I'm reading all of Wheel of Time this year. Well, not all this year, but I'm reading a bunch this year, so those would count. I also am reading the entire Powder Mage trilogy, so that third book would count for hard mode. I'm reading Fury Song, which is the third book of a series. I plan on reading a lot more series than that. Bone Shard War will be the third series. I have the final book in the Scholarman series to read, so I have a lot of options for this one. I'm not worried about this one. I'm gonna leave it open to whatever I feel like at the end of the year, essentially, because I know I'll hit this prompt a few times. That is my Our Fantasy Bingo TBR. I'm thinking about doing a recommendation video. Is there something that would interest you guys? Because I do think some of these prompts were harder than others, and I have some recommendations for a lot of these prompts. So I could do like a recommendation thread video where I went over all the prompts like I did in this video, but instead of doing my TBR, giving you books I've read and enjoyed that fit them, if that makes sense. So let me know down below if that's something that would interest you. Let me know down below if that's something that would interest you. If you are feeling chatty today, let me know some recommendations. I'd love to have the comments just be a recommendation thread. So if you have a book that fits any of these prompts, let us know down below. And then if you're not feeling chatty, leave me some sort of alien emoji. I feel like there's a big sci-fi vibe going on with this year's Our Fantasy Bingo board. And then if you just want to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon, all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.